Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Speedy Research Verification. I'm Anthony Hale from the team here at GGNA, and we're very excited for you to join us today. Before we begin, I just want to go over some technical details. We ask that if you can, please log into WebEx before dialing in. Once you launch the webinar, then a window will appear on your screen, similar to what you're seeing right now. If you've already called in, please hang up and follow the instructions in the window to dial in. Then we'll be able to associate your phone with your name. Next, we may ask some yes or no questions during the session. Please look at the slide on the screen to see where you can answer yes or no. Also notice the raise your hand feature. During the session, your phone will be muted. If you want to ask Kat or Jennifer a question directly, please raise your hand, and that will signal to us that you want to ask them a question. And then we can unmute your line so you can speak with them. We also encourage you to use the chat panel shown on slide 3 in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen for any questions or comments during the session. Please notice that we ask you to direct your question to all panelists so that the presenters and I can see it and field the question. If at any point during the webinar you are experiencing any technical difficulties, please send me an email at ahoell@grensglier.com or call our meeting provider WebEx directly at 866-229-3239. That's 866-229-3239. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kat.
Thank you so much. We realize that there are some phone problems happening for some of you who are trying to call in, that you're getting a busy signal. And if that is true, we're going to put up the WebEx line directly to call Citrix GoToMeeting on that. This is Kat Banakis, and I am delighted today to be joined by Jennifer Phillett. Jennifer is a prospect research professional on a mission to assist fundraisers and researchers across the country who are trying to help folks meet major gift goals. She is CEO of the Prospect Research Institute, president of the Aspire Research Group, and co-author of Prospect Research for Fundraisers, the Essential Handbook, which I cannot recommend enough as a great primer on how to get involved in all of this. And today, we are going to be talking about how to verify prospect screening results so that the frontline fundraisers can start cultivating newly qualified prospects. And if you give us just 2 seconds, I'm going to hand it over to Jennifer. And we are now transitioned. Technology is an amazing thing. So Jen, thank you for your time today and for your generosity in sharing expertise. And you know, today we're talking about verifying prospect screening results. And I have to say, here at GGNA with DonorScape, we have a really good screening product, we think. So why would an organization even need to verify the results?
Well, that's a great first question, Kat, and thanks for having me here today. I'm pretty thrilled to get to talk about my favorite topic, which is prospect research. And there's a couple of, well, there's 2 really good reasons why we would verify. I couldn't agree with you more. I think that DonorScape is a wonderful screening product. You're taking that big who's who group and you're segmenting it into tiers so that we have a better idea of which people fit into which group and how we should proceed. But sometimes, and I know this is going to resonate with you, Kat, sometimes when we send our donor information to you to screen it, it isn't always the best. Maybe the addresses are bad, maybe the list hasn't been used in a long time, so there's some deceased on there. There's many reasons why we might have some errors in our own data. So that's going to affect the results that you're able to give us. So that's one reason. And another good reason is common names. like Harris Rosen. He's a hotel mogul. He's here in Florida, where I am, and he has a really common name. And I think common names are tough even when we're human beings looking. And I can eyeball his photo and say, yes, that's my guy when I see a bio. But when you're automated, you really can't do that. So I think those two things are some of the big reasons why we would verify the very good results that you give.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
And yeah, that absolutely makes sense. I think for the sake of giving context and that, it might help if we took a minute to define what we mean by verify.
Yes, good point, because we could be using the same words and have completely different definitions. And that's not just between you and I, but different organizations all use different terms for the different parts of fundraising and research. So if I were going to, myself, when I talk about verify, I kind of mean that first out of the door check. So for example, a smaller organization is going to want to get a return on their investment for the screening results. So they need to eyeball, and you can get away with a lot of eyeballing the list, just to make sure it's really Harris Rosen, that it's not a small, tiny house in Brooklyn as the only property, and here he is a hotel mogul. That's a very unlikely match. So we can do a lot of eyeballing, and we can rely on the DonorScape ratings and get people right out the door. Sometimes there just isn't time, or your staff is so small that these ratings are so good enough that we can kind of skip some first steps or some deeper research and eyeball it. And then, do one or two double checks when we're eyeballing it and having a question. I think when you need to go past verification is when you have a highly paid, highly experienced team of fundraisers. You really don't want to send them out on a maybe prospect.
Sure.
So you might then need to do some more qualifying.
And what then do you mean by qualifying?
Right. So we're going to define qualifying. So qualifying is going to be going beyond what the screening showed me. So I'm not just going to verify the accuracy of what I see as the screening result. I'm going to take another step. And I think, oh yes. So in this graphic, our screening starts at the left, and we move towards the gift on the right. And all of the steps we take in between, whether that's me behind a computer screen or the frontline fundraiser out in the field talking to the prospect, we're getting a better picture of that prospect. And I think the places that we are going to qualify are the places that don't always show up in a screening, because they're not necessarily going to have a hard number attached to them, or they're not going to be accessible to a screening. So I've got some examples here. Private company ownership. Sure, if there's revenues in Dun & Bradstreet, that's going to come through on the screening, but that may or may not be representative of the reality of the wealth. They might have some original investors that came on, and so their wealth is diluted in that company, or the opposite. And then there's different fields where, as human being researchers, we're skilled enough to know that just because they are in that occupation, they are very likely to earn a certain salary. And I'm always thinking of like a hedge fund manager. I mean, they may not have some hard asset wealth that we're going to find, but once we see that, it's like, okay, if their hedge fund is successful, they're making a lot of money. And I put up there an example for you, Debbie Donor, and this is actually representative of a recent verification that I did, and a qualification actually, because we took a step beyond. And Debbie Donor was rated by the screening at $1 million and under, up to $1 million, and I looked at her gift list, and I saw that she was a very loyal donor to her alma mater. And I know higher ed often writes about their donors, and so I went and I searched on the alma mater's website, and sure enough, they had a web page that described her $5 million gift. So, boom, like instantly her capacity to give is looking like it's more than $1 million. So that's something that the screening can't see, because that web page wasn't the most public announcement even. It wasn't like I found a press release. So does that make sense, how qualifying is different from verifying?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I'm wondering also, when you get back a huge list of names from a screening, how do you prioritize who you're going to go about verifying and or qualifying?
Okay, good question. Well, I think the first step we could take are the DonorScape ratings, but sometimes that still gives us a long list, right? We hope it gives us a long list. We hope that we have hundreds of people that are rated really high, and now we don't know what to do because there's 300 and I only have maybe one gift officer. So one of the things I like to show people, and this is the first part, linkage, is taken right from the book Prospect Research for Fundraisers, because we talk about different ratings. And I'm putting it in the context of fundraising because I think that's well understood. There's many ways to create simple scoring, but we're going to go with fundraising. And in fundraising, we're looking for linkage, ability, and inclination. And when we talk about linkage, this is sometimes internal data that's not always in our donor database. We wish it was, but it's not always there. And so this is the real piece, I think, that we can do some value add to the donor screening results. And the insider, active, inactive, distant, I would take each name and give a rating in each of these categories for those 300, because this is really fast to narrow it down. And I would then have to define for my organization, what does insider mean? Is that going to be a board member and a top donor that we talk to frequently? Is active going to be a volunteer? What's that going to be? And ability and inclination, I don't see why I wouldn't just use those DonorScape ratings, but notice the numbers I've put. So 5 for insider, 3 for active. And then for the ability, I just went 5, 4, 3, 2, and the same for inclination. The reason I might go from 5 to 3 is so that I can instantly sort out. I really separate the most important from the next level. So you can play with that any way you want. I put a note on there to talk about solicitor assignments because I think that gets overlooked. If someone is already assigned and has been talked to, that's a step up. That should be weighted a little more. And I think that's a quick way to boom, I've got 300 people and now, they're all prioritized. Right.
And then what would an actual plan of attack look like with this, both in terms of strategy and also maybe if you could look up an individual record or something like that?
Right. So I would look at each of my areas that I just rated people for, and I'd come up with a kind of checklist. I'd have to know where the information is. Is it in my donor database, or do I have to go ask a colleague for their event attendee lists to check against, that kind of thing. But yeah, I think it would be fun to go out to a record and look. One of the reasons that I come up with my checklist first, before I go searching on a record, is so that I know when to stop. What am I trying to qualify for? Maybe they got rated at 10 million plus, but I only need my lead gift is $1 million. So as soon as I reach $1 million, I should stop. And I think we kind of forget to put it. Yeah, if we forget that ahead of time, we could get lost in the excitement.
Right. So as soon as you've verified that they are meeting whatever is your required minimum, you don't need to continue verifying every piece of data because they've reached that basic threshold.
Exactly. And that goes for, linkage too. If they're an insider, boom, insider. I can stop qualifying them as an insider. Right. Just stop. So checklists are handy. However you do them. I say checklist, but that could be your profile template for that particular project. Whatever it is, it's a way of making sure I'm filling in the blanks. And when we go through this record, I again chose Harris Rosen because I was trying to find a home address on him personally, and he's a very public figure here in Florida, and he's like tricky. So I thought he was a great example. Sometimes the way I'm going to look for information doesn't fit the way I might rank someone. Oh, I'm not sure why. Maybe I was lost.
Might have been stagnant too long. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see if he'll pull up. Oh, there we go.
Do you see him right there? Oh,
there he is. There we are.
So here he is. And one of the first places I look whenever I'm researching, I always want to just confirm things. And I like real estate for that reason. So here we have 9 matches, and he shows up at 500,000. And when I look through these, and they're all listed here, I'm always looking at the tax mailing address. And interestingly for him, it shows up as his work address. So that's a little trickier, right? It's often the person's home address, their primary. So here's where I would step out of the results, and I would check. And I keep all of my links here on this free page on my website. And I would go down to assets, for example, and I would check on Pulowski's tax assessor. I'd go to Florida, and I opened it up for you so that it's quick. For him, it doesn't show up right away. His homestead exemption for tax, real estate tax, would mean that if it said a yes here, it would mean it was his home address, and it doesn't. So sometimes with a very wealthy prospect, I'm going to let that go. Maybe I already know his home because that's in the database, or maybe the gift officer already has a way to contact him. But I would start there with real estate, just to confirm things. And then there's also, I'll just point out real quickly, some key information. Who's who? Whenever I get a match, I'm going there because there's a few things that I really want to find to help me match Harris Rosen. I want to know his spouse name, which I often find in real estate. I want to know his education because people love their alma mater and are often engaged there. And I want to know his location. Sometimes a biography is going to tell me where he lives. So I would go into his who's who. And I would definitely want occupation, corporate affiliations. And now through these screening results, I have a pretty good picture of Harris Rosen. And that's when I would step outside. I might do a Google search, and I wanted to share this tip with you. I remember. Let me step back for 1 second. So when we look through his giving here, that was what was so interesting. So here he has University of Central Florida. He's given $10 million, $20 million. He loves them. He's also a donor to Valencia College pretty loyally. And Jewish Federation of Greater Orlando. Look at that funny number. We might suspect that Harris Rosen, even if we didn't know by his name, is probably Jewish, and he may be practicing Jewish. So I'm going to take a look at University of Central Florida. I'm going to go out to Google. And what I'm looking for is the URL for University of Central Florida. It's ucf.edu. Now I'm going to put in his name, and this is the trick. A lot of people know this, but I'm always surprised when people don't. So I've typed the word site, S-I-T-E, no spaces, and now I'm putting ucf.edu. This is going to search for Harris Rosen only on the UCF website. And notice how many times he shows up.
And all his giving history there with the School of Rosen.
Yes, and many times these high-profile individuals or top donors are going to be profiled by the university. So I can learn so much personal information about him that screening isn't going to tell me. That's going to help me qualify him.
That's great. Jen, we have run up to the end of our time together, but I had heard a rumor that you were going to give something free away to our audience today.
Yes. So I am excited to share that I have some online courses through the Prospect Research Institute. And since we were talking about verifying and finding information quickly, they're going to get an email from you, right, as a follow-up after the webinar
Absolutely.
today?
It will include the recording of today's session and all of our contact information and everything.
Well, it's also going to include a password so that when you come to this website, prospectresearchinstitute.org/DonorScape, you're going to find this video, Getting Good at Google. And that's a short video lecture that's going to talk about the site colon as well as other tips.
Thank you, Jen. That is wonderful. I do want to honor the amount of time that we set aside for today, and I know that some of you need to go, but we did want to offer a few minutes for folks to ask questions. So if you have questions for Jen or I, please use the chat function, and we will stay on the line and answer all those that we're able, and any that we're not able to get to, we will include them in the follow-up email. For those of you who need to go, though, thank you so much for joining us. And especially Jennifer Filla, I always learn something in our time together, and that was more than true today. Thank you so much for what you put into this session. The guidelines and the tips and the prioritization were really so helpful.
Well, thank you. It was a pleasure.
All right, so we have a question in here. How much average time is typical in verification for each screening? Josh, I am so excited that you asked this because I asked it also and Jennifer didn't want to answer it. So Jennifer, how much time does it take?
That's right. I didn't, and I thought I was going to get away with that. Josh, how could you? So how long does it take? It really does depend on a number of factors. What I like to do myself is I test one or two names in each tier. So, you know, whatever the capacity ranges are, either directly from the screening or, you know, for my campaign. And then I time myself and I look at what kind of problems I'm encountering. Sometimes I have to go back and redo my checklist or take into account some other things. And that said, the different capacity levels sometimes make a big difference in how long it takes. So a high net worth individual can either be really fast, like, oh yeah, you can give us 500,000, or it can take a lot longer because you're swimming in information and you're trying to figure out, can he give 10,000 or 20,000, you know, or somewhere in between a range. So it can take longer or shorter for a high net worth. And then low net worth individuals can sometimes be difficult to verify, especially that affluent, where they're not quite high net worth and they may have a pretty regular occupation. So sometimes that takes a little more time, or it's easier. You know, it depends on your constituency. So I threw in some down there, like to verify just, you know, quick, did I get it right? Was the match correct? Is that really the person? It could be 15 to 30 minutes. Sometimes it's really fast. And then to qualify, I wouldn't say less than 60, because if you say less than 60, it's going to take you longer. And then, you know, when you have to time it out, like how many days till we get it done, it's important to have a good average. So I hope that answers.
Yeah, I think so. And related to that, beyond we've met the dollar minimum, are there things that you do from keeping yourself from going down the rabbit hole?
Yes.
And
I do this. And what?
Of going down the hole of an endless amount of research.
Oh, right. Well, because they get so exciting. You know, there is some kind of balance, because you hear the story about someone who, you know, went the extra mile and read the whole article and found this little nugget that sealed the deal. I think as we get better at research, we start to recognize what are the most important pieces for fundraising. Mm-hmm. And it's not always the dollar. It's not always how much wealth they have. So that kind of skill, together with, I really rely on my templates and or checklists to keep me focused. So I will stop researching. Sometimes I'll just stop reading that page and I'll go back to that template or checklist and I'll look, what haven't I filled in? Am I taking too long? And I'm watching the time on the clock. It's a I think it's a pretty fun game. So I know that like in 10 minutes I should have been able to confirm real estate, and then if it's 15 minutes and I haven't, I should make a decision. Is it time to keep going because we got to find a contact address, or should I stop?
Right, right. All right. Any other questions from our audience? It's looking like not for now. Jennifer, thank you again so very much, and we will get that password out to everyone along with the recording as follow-up to this.
Wonderful. Thanks, Kat. It was fun.
Thanks. Have a great afternoon, everyone.
Bye.